I'm Gloria. I lived a pretty normal life until I met a man named Christopher. He was pretty attractive, so when he asked me out on a date, I said yes. He was so sweet to me and I fell in love with him. We dated for a year, until he finally asked me to marry him. I did, and we enjoyed a very happy life together, just the two of us. But soon after our honeymoon was over, Christopher began to change.
Hey, where's my beer? Didn't I tell you to get more at the store today? Or are you so stupid you forgot already?
I'm sorry. I'll run out and get some right away. He kept yelling at me for forgetting small things, like to pick up more beer or cleaning the house. I started to feel scared around him, like he wasn't the man I thought he was. But I was still determined to try and make our marriage work out, so I stayed with him. But it only got worse over time, and soon I felt more like a maid than his wife. I cleaned up after him, did the chores, and tried to make him happy so he wouldn't shout at me anymore. He barely took me out on dates. Every day after work, he'd just flop onto the couch and watch TV. Finally, I had enough. I let him know that I wasn't going to take any more of this. You're not the man I married. You don't respect me and everything I do for you. If you don't smarten up and fix your attitude, I'm leaving you.
Oh, really? You're leaving me? You're worthless anyway. No one else would ever want to date you, so good luck finding anyone willing to put up with you. Honestly, you should be thanking me for even letting you live here.
I was heartbroken. I couldn't believe what Christopher had told me, but part of me did. I started to think I was worthless and had nowhere else to go, so I stayed with Christopher for a while longer. After that day, things only got worse. He started to hit me and throw me around if he didn't get what he wanted. He started to drink more and more, too, and I felt trapped. No matter where I went, I couldn't escape Christopher. But then the impossible happened. I'm pregnant? No way. Sure enough, I was showing signs of pregnancy, so I bought a test and tested myself. I was already almost done with the first trimester. I thought that this would be great. Finally, Christopher would love me now that I was carrying his child. I couldn't wait to tell him. That night, when he came home from work, I gave him the surprise.
What's this? I don't want to take care of any brats. I thought we agreed not to have any kids. You idiot. How could you betray me like this?
Then he slapped me across the face. I was too stunned to speak, but Christopher continued to hit me, pulling my hair and hitting my face and arms. When he was done, he grabbed another beer and settled down in front of the TV, grumbling about how ungrateful I was to him. I decided I'd had enough, so that night I planned my escape. After Christopher went to sleep, I gathered my stuff to leave. I'd rather take my chances anywhere else but here. But as I got ready to leave, I accidentally dropped something and it loudly clattered to the ground. I held my breath and heard Christopher in the other room getting up.
Gloria, what's going on? I told you never to interrupt my sleep.
When he saw my packed bag, Christopher realized what was going on, and it made him furious.
You ungrateful little... Do you know how much I do for you? And you're trying to leave me? This is because of that brat baby, isn't it? I'll show you what happens to the people who try to cross me.
That night was the worst of them all. He kept beating me and hitting me all over. I fell to the floor trying to protect myself, and he kept kicking my stomach. I was in tremendous pain. My whole body hurt. Finally, he stopped when he realized how hurt I was.
And if you try to leave again, I'll kill you. You understand me?
Christopher dragged me to the car and took me to the hospital where the doctors immediately began to treat my wounds. I could hear Christopher explaining to them what happened before they moved me to a private room.
I found her like this. I think she got mugged on her way home. Isn't that right, honey?
I agreed with him before the doctors took me away to run some tests. They looked at my face and arms and bandaged up all the bruises and cuts. But then the doctors gave me the heartbreaking news. They told me that I wasn't pregnant anymore. Christopher had killed my baby with his abuse. I was heartbroken and furious. Christopher was in the waiting room, ready to pick me up from the hospital, but I knew I would never go back to him after what he did. When I had the chance, I pulled a nurse aside and told her what was going on. She told me she could help me, so I waited for my chance. I watched through a window as the nurse approached Christopher and started to talk to him. Oh no. She didn't believe me, and she was telling Christopher about everything. I could only close my eyes and wait. But after a minute, nothing happened. Christopher hadn't angrily burst in to yell at me. I took another look and saw that the nurse had actually taken him to fill out some forms with his back turned to the doors. She noticed me in the window and gave me a thumbs up. Quickly, I snuck past Christopher and out of the hospital. I never looked back, just kept running. I'm still saddened by what happened to me, but I'm glad Christopher isn't in the picture anymore. I ran from the city and returned to my hometown in another state where Christopher wouldn't be able to find me ever again. One day I called Christopher and he was furious I had disappeared. I sparked up a conversation about the miscarriage and what happened. Christopher claimed to be sorry and explained it was all my fault that he beat me up that night. But what he didn't know was I was recording everything, which I sent to the police as evidence, along with Christopher's address. He has been locked up and won't do this to any other woman. I hope I will have another baby with a man who will treat me right and I'll be a happy mother. I haven't heard from Christopher since then. My wounds are recovering well, but I don't know if I'll be dating again anytime soon.
Hey friends! Please like and subscribe for more amazing stories! My name is Tessa, and I'm 16 years old. When I was younger, my parents were hardly around. They had me very young, and eventually, my father left my mother. Being a single mom so young was impossible as I got older, so she placed me up for adoption. I was young and didn't remember much, but my adoptive parents were lovely initially. They tried to understand me and help me transition into my new life with them. Whenever I told them I missed my mom, they reassured me that I could see her again one day. I hoped they were right. But then, everything changed. My adopted mother left my new dad. I was devastated because it was like history was repeating itself, and I was losing yet another parent. My adopted dad became very bitter toward me and told me horrible things. He'd say, "You're only good for doing all of the things my real kids don't want to do." And, "We only adopted you because my ex-wife wanted a new kid." It broke my heart because it seemed so true. He turned mean after she left, and all the chores I had to do were much worse than my siblings. They hardly had to do anything other than clean their rooms, but I had to clean toilets and work outside in the hot summer sun. One day, my adopted dad told me I needed to get a job. He said, "There's not enough money to support everyone, so you need to pick up the slack." Why just me? Why not any of the other kids? I asked him. I was nervous about having a job. "I'm going to fail out of school if I don't have enough time to study." He laughed at me. "That's funny you think you're still going to school. You are to work for the family that took you in and repay us." I burst into tears, but had no other choice but to listen to him. So, I quit school and got a job at the local grocery store. I was definitely the youngest person working there. People even asked me why I worked there instead of attending school. I didn't tell them that my adopted dad made me. Instead, I said my family needed the money. When I first started, I was barely bringing home much money. My adopted dad would even accuse me of spending my earnings on unnecessary things. He'd yell at me and say, "You worked 8 hours and this is all the money you made?" I would tell him, "Yes, I'm new, so I can't make much per hour. But I'm working hard and will hopefully get a raise soon." He didn't believe me. But I continued working hard and took advantage of the employee discount at the grocery store. I could at least bring home extra food to help compensate for my low wages. My adoptive family didn't like the ingredients I brought home because they had to cook it all themselves. So, I took advantage of what I had. Slowly, I began to teach myself how to make different meals. I made breakfast skillets, 5-ingredient tacos, and even a special spicy spaghetti. It took some trial and error, but I perfected my recipes and even tried to share them with my family. "You don't know how to cook. I'd never eat anything you make," my older brother would tell me. "Just because you work with food doesn't mean you can cook it well." My sister turned her nose up at anything I put in front of her. I let their comments go and continued cooking. One day, I shared my creations with one of my friends named Carly. "Oh my gosh! I don't usually like these kinds of foods, but these are amazing! How do you make them?" I was so excited to share with Carly how easy it was to make all of the delicious meals. They only needed a few simple ingredients and weren't too expensive. They were the perfect meal ideas for young people. "You should make a cookbook. I bet people would buy it. I sure would." Her suggestion got me thinking a lot about it. Maybe I could do it. I happened to get a raise at the grocery store and was making more money each shift. I kept it all a secret from my adoptive dad. I spent my free time creating new recipes, over and over, until it was perfect. My horrible family had no idea what I had planned. The extra money I saved was going to be used to create the recipe books. I could only afford to print 10 books and used my friend's printer at her parents' house. My cookbook of meals made with only 5 ingredients sold right away to my friends and then their friends. I even made a tiny profit. This was enough motivation for me to keep making more and selling them. I had enough money saved from the grocery store to have the recipe books professionally printed. The big order would let me sell 50 recipe books a day by posting them online and then mailing them all over the world. I made a promise to myself that when I had enough money, I would book a trip to visit my mother. But then, I ran into a huge problem. While working at the grocery store, the giant box of recipe books was delivered to my house earlier than planned. My adopted dad called me to yell at me. "Why is there a massive box of books that arrived in your name?" I opened it, and it says you spent $500 having these printed? I knew I was in trouble, and worried he might destroy the books. I left work early and was able to get the box to my room, where I locked myself away and began taking orders for the books. They continued selling quickly, and I would have enough money to cover a flight to visit my mother. I didn't have her contact information, but I knew her full name. I was able to find her work email and asked her if I was able to visit. She replied right away, saying, "Of course you can visit me, Tessa. Please do." Since I was no longer a young child, I was allowed to contact her. I booked the flight for the next day. Early in the morning, I told my adopted dad I was leaving for work. but I was actually headed to the airport with my backpack full of my cookbooks. My biological mom was so happy to see me. "You've grown so much! I can't believe it!" She told me all about the reasons she placed me for adoption, and I told her I understood what she needed to do, but it wasn't easy living with my new family. However, she was shocked when I told her the ways they acted. "I'm going to fight to get you back," she promised. My adoptive dad tried contacting me, but it was too late. My mom was already collaborating with the social worker to regain custody of me and change the adoption agreement. They interviewed my mom right away and confirmed that she could regain custody. That's when I told her all about my business and my successful recipes that were suddenly going viral online. "Let me help you with your business. We can use the money to start renting an office," she suggested. My adoptive dad got in trouble for everything he did and for making me quit school to work. Meanwhile, my mom and I worked on my business together, and I got to go back to school again. We made the perfect team and were able to make up for the lost time together when I was growing up. Thanks for watching and listening to my story. Please like and subscribe.